The small town of Millbrook, nestled in the heart of Texas, buzzed with excitement. It was the day before the wedding of Sophia Martinez, the town's beloved kindergarten teacher, and Jackson Hughes, the charming son of Millbrook's wealthiest family. The air was thick with anticipation, and whispers of the grand ceremony echoed through the quaint streets. Sophia stood in front of the mirror in her modest apartment, her chocolate-brown eyes glistening with unshed tears of joy. Her long, raven hair cascaded down her back in soft waves, adorned with delicate white flowers. The wedding dress, a simple yet elegant gown she had saved for months to afford, hugged her petite frame perfectly. "Oh, Sophia," her best friend and maid of honor, Lily Parker, gushed. "You look absolutely stunning. Jackson won't be able to take his eyes off you." Sophia blushed, her caramel skin glowing with happiness. "I can't believe it's finally happening, Lily. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a dream." Little did Sophia know that her dream was about to shatter into a million pieces. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over Millbrook, Sophia decided to surprise Jackson at his family's mansion. She wanted to share a quiet moment with him before the whirlwind of their wedding day. With a spring in her step and a heart full of love, she made her way to the Hughes estate. The grand iron gates opened silently as she approached, and Sophia couldn't help but feel a twinge of intimidation. The Hughes family had always made her feel like an outsider, but Jackson had promised her that things would change after they were married. She clung to that promise as she walked up the long, winding driveway. As Sophia neared the mansion, she heard raised voices coming from the garden. Curiosity got the better of her, and she quietly made her way towards the sound. What she saw next made her blood run cold. There, in the middle of the perfectly manicured rose garden, stood Jackson. But he wasn't alone. In his arms was Veronica Sinclair, the town's notorious socialite and Sophia's longtime tormentor. Their lips were locked in a passionate kiss, oblivious to the world around them. Sophia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She stumbled backward, her hand covering her mouth to stifle a sob. But fate wasn't done with her yet. As she turned to flee, she bumped into a solid chest. Well, drawled Richard Hughes, Jackson's father. His cold blue eyes looked down at her with disdain. "If it isn't our little gold digger. Did you really think we'd let someone like you marry into our family?" Sophia's world spun. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard's laugh was cruel and mocking. "Oh, you poor, naive girl. Did you honestly believe Jackson loved you? This whole engagement was nothing but a ruse, a way to teach you a lesson about trying to rise above your station." Each word was like a dagger to Sophia's heart. She looked past Richard to see Jackson and Veronica approaching, their faces a mix of shock and cruel amusement. "Sophia," Jackson began, his voice devoid of any warmth. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." Veronica's lips curled into a smirk. "Although I must say, the look on your face right now is priceless. Did you really think someone like Jackson would choose you over me?" Sophia's mind reeled as the pieces fell into place. The strange behavior from Jackson's family, the whispers that stopped when she entered a room, the pitying glances from the town's elite. It had all been part of an elaborate, cruel joke. With the last shred of dignity she could muster, Sophia straightened her back and looked Jackson in the eye. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why go through all of this? Why not just reject me from the start?" Jackson had the decency to look uncomfortable for a moment before his face hardened. "It was meant to be a lesson, Sophia. People like you don't belong in our world. We needed to make sure you understood that." Sophia felt something inside her break. The sweet, trusting part of her that had always seen the good in others withered and died in that moment. Without another word, she turned and ran, ignoring the mocking laughter that followed her. As she fled the Hughes estate, the skies opened up, and rain began to pour. It was as if the heavens themselves were weeping for Sophia's shattered dreams. She ran through the streets of Millbrook, her wedding dress muddied and torn, mascara streaking down her face. People stopped and stared as she passed, whispers and gasps following in her wake. By the time she reached her small apartment, the news of her humiliation had already begun to spread through the town like wildfire. Sophia collapsed on her bed, her body racked with sobs. How could she have been so blind? How could she face anyone in town again? The wedding invitations had been sent, the venue booked, her meager savings spent on a dress she would never wear. She had never felt so alone, so utterly destroyed. As the night wore on, Sophia's tears slowly subsided, replaced by a numbness that settled deep in her bones. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain pattering against her window, each drop a reminder of her broken heart. Just before dawn, as the first weak rays of sunlight began to pierce through the clouds, Sophia made a decision. She couldn't stay in Millbrook, not after this. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Aunt Rosa," she whispered when a groggy voice answered. "I need your help. Can I come stay with you in New York for a while?" As Sophia began to pack her meager belongings, she had no idea that this moment of despair would be the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. Little did she know that in the bustling streets of New York City, fate had a surprising twist in store for her, one that would not only heal her broken heart but also lead her to a destiny greater than she could have ever imagined. The sun rose over Millbrook, marking the day that was supposed to be Sophia's wedding. Instead, it became the day she left her old life behind, determined to rise from the ashes of her humiliation and find a strength she never knew she possessed. As the bus pulled away from the Millbrook station, Sophia looked back at the town that had been her home for all of her 25 years. Through her tears, she made a silent vow: she would return one day, not as the naive girl they had so cruelly deceived, but as a woman who had conquered her demons and found success on her own terms. Little did Sophia know that her journey was about to take her on a path filled with unexpected allies, hidden enemies, and a love so pure it would shake the very foundations of everything she thought she knew about herself and the world around her. The bustling streets of New York City were a far cry from the quaint lanes of Millbrook. Sophia Martinez stepped off the bus at Port Authority, her small suitcase clutched tightly in her hand. The cacophony of honking horns, chattering pedestrians, and rumbling subway trains overwhelmed her senses. For a moment, she stood frozen, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. "Sophia! Mija!" A familiar voice cut through the noise, and Sophia turned to see her Aunt Rosa waving frantically from the crowd. Relief washed over her as she rushed into her aunt's warm embrace. Aunt Rosa held her niece at arm's length, her kind eyes taking in Sophia's disheveled appearance and red-rimmed eyes. "Oh, my dear," she said softly. "What they did to you, it's unforgivable. But you're safe now. We'll get through this together." As they made their way to Aunt Rosa's small apartment in Queens, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since that fateful night in Millbrook. Perhaps here, in this vast city of dreams, she could reinvent herself and leave the pain behind. The next few weeks passed in a blur as Sophia adjusted to life in New York. Aunt Rosa, a hardworking nurse at a local hospital, helped her niece find a job as a waitress at a trendy cafe in Manhattan. It wasn't teaching, but it was a start, and Sophia threw herself into the work with determination. One rainy afternoon, as Sophia was clearing tables, she overheard a conversation that would change the course of her life. "I'm telling you, James," a well-dressed woman said to her companion, "if we don't find a suitable candidate soon, we'll have to shut down the program entirely. It would be such a waste of potential." The man named James sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I know, Victoria. But where are we going to find someone with both the qualifications and the passion for working with underprivileged children at such short notice?" Sophia's heart raced. Before she could stop herself, she approached the table. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I couldn't help but overhear. I used to be a kindergarten teacher back in Texas. I have experience working with children from all backgrounds." Victoria and James exchanged surprised looks. "Is that so?" Victoria asked, her interest piqued. "And what brings you to New York, working as a waitress instead of teaching?" Sophia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I needed a fresh start," she said finally. "But I miss teaching more than anything. If there's an opportunity to work with children again, I'd be more than willing to learn and adapt to whatever the program needs." James leaned forward, his eyes kind. "Well, young lady, it seems fate has brought us together. We run a nonprofit organization called Bright Futures, which provides educational support to underprivileged children in the city. We're in desperate need of dedicated teachers. Would you be interested in learning more?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Yes," she exclaimed, then blushed at her own enthusiasm. Yes, I would be very interested." Victoria handed her a business card. "Come to this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll discuss the details and see if you're a good fit for our program." As the pair left the cafe, Sophia clutched the card to her chest, hardly daring to believe this stroke of luck. For the first time since leaving Millbrook, she felt a spark of excitement for the future. The next morning, Sophia stood in front of the mirror in Aunt Rosa's apartment, smoothing down her simple black dress. She had spent hours the night before researching Bright Futures and preparing for any questions they might ask. This was her chance to reclaim her passion, and she was determined not to let it slip away. The Bright Futures office was located in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. As Sophia entered, she was struck by the vibrant murals covering the walls, depicting children from diverse backgrounds reaching for the stars. The space buzzed with energy as teachers and volunteers bustled about, preparing for the day ahead. Victoria greeted Sophia warmly, introducing her to the rest of the team. As they toured the facility, Sophia's excitement grew. This was more than just a school, it was a haven for children who had faced unimaginable challenges. "Many of our students come from broken homes, some are recent immigrants, others have learning disabilities," James explained as they walked. "What they all have in common is a need for someone to believe in them, to show them that they're capable of achieving great things." Sophia's heart swelled. She thought of her own humble beginnings, of the teachers who had encouraged her to dream big despite the odds. "I want to be that person for them," she said softly. Victoria smiled. "That's exactly the kind of passion we're looking for, Sophia. Now, let's see how you do with the children." As they entered a classroom filled with eager young faces, Sophia felt a sense of coming home. The next hour flew by as she read stories, sang songs, and engaged the children in educational games. By the end of the session, even the most reluctant students were hanging on her every word. James and Victoria exchanged impressed glances. "Well, Sophia," Victoria said, "I think it's safe to say you've found your new home. Welcome to Bright Futures." Tears of joy sprang to Sophia's eyes as she shook their hands. This was more than just a job, it was a chance at redemption, an opportunity to make a real difference in the world. As the weeks turned into months, Sophia threw herself into her work with Bright Futures. She developed innovative teaching methods, stayed late to help struggling students, and even started a mentorship program for older children. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed, and soon she became one of the most beloved teachers in the organization. But even as Sophia found fulfillment in her work, she couldn't shake the lingering pain of what had happened in Millbrook. Some nights, she would wake up in a cold sweat, reliving the moment of betrayal in the Hughes garden. Aunt Rosa urged her to seek therapy, and reluctantly, Sophia agreed. Dr. Amelia Chen, a compassionate therapist with a no-nonsense attitude, helped Sophia navigate the complex emotions surrounding her experience. "What happened to you was cruel and unforgivable," Dr. Chen said during one of their sessions. "But you mustn't let it define you. You are so much more than the pain they inflicted." Slowly but surely, Sophia began to heal. She made friends with her colleagues at Bright Futures, started exploring the city, and even allowed herself to enjoy the attention of David, a kind-hearted volunteer who always seemed to find reasons to be around her classroom. One evening, as Sophia was leaving work, she quite literally ran into a tall, handsome stranger. Papers went flying, and they both scrambled to pick them up. "I'm so sorry," Sophia apologized, looking up into the most striking green eyes she had ever seen. The man smiled, and Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. "No harm done," he said, his voice warm and rich. "I'm Ethan, by the way. Ethan Blackwood." "Sophia Martinez," she replied, shaking his offered hand. "Well, Sophia Martinez," Ethan said, his eyes twinkling, "since I nearly knocked you over, perhaps I could make it up to you with a cup of coffee?" For a moment, Sophia hesitated. The memory of Jackson's betrayal flashed through her mind. But then she remembered Dr. Chen's words about not letting the past define her. Taking a deep breath, she smiled back at Ethan. "I'd like that," she said. As they walked to a nearby cafe, chatting easily, Sophia felt a flutter of excitement. Little did she know that Ethan Blackwood would play a pivotal role in the next chapter of her life, a chapter filled with unexpected twists, hidden connections to her past, and a love that would test everything she thought she knew about trust and forgiveness. Meanwhile, back in Millbrook, the ripples of Sophia's departure were still being felt. Jackson Hughes sat in his father's study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the manicured lawns of the family estate. The guilt that had been gnawing at him since that fateful night had only grown stronger with time. "You need to snap out of this, son," Richard Hughes said, his voice hard. "She was nothing but a gold digger. We did what was necessary to protect our family's interests." Jackson turned to face his father, his eyes blazing with a mix of anger and shame. "Did we? Or did we destroy an innocent woman's life for no reason other than our own prejudice and cruelty?" Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "Don't be naive, Jackson. People like her will always try to take advantage of families like ours. It's time you learned how the real world works." But as Jackson stormed out of the study, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. Veronica, who had once seemed so alluring, now repulsed him with her callousness. The life he had always taken for granted, the parties, the privilege, the power, suddenly felt hollow. In that moment, Jackson made a decision. He would find Sophia, wherever she was, and make things right. Little did he know that his journey of redemption would lead him on a collision course with Sophia's new life in New York, setting in motion a series of events that would shake both their worlds to the core. As the sun set over New York City, Sophia sat in the small garden on the roof of Aunt Rosa's apartment building, a notebook in her lap. She was working on a proposal for a new program at Bright Futures, one that would provide additional support for students learning English as a second language. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Had a great time today. Looking forward to seeing you again soon." Sophia smiled, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly hopeful about the future. She had a job she loved, friends who supported her, and maybe, just maybe, the possibility of new love on the horizon. As she looked out at the twinkling lights of the city, Sophia made a silent vow. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with courage and grace. The girl who had fled Millbrook in tears was gone, replaced by a woman who was ready to write her own story, one of resilience, compassion, and triumph. Little did Sophia know that her story was far from over. The coming months would bring revelations that would test her newfound strength, forcing her to confront her past and fight for her future in ways she never imagined. But for now, in this moment of peace, Sophia allowed herself to dream of the endless possibilities that lay before her in the city that never sleeps. As autumn painted New York City in vibrant hues of red and gold, Sophia Martinez found herself falling into a comfortable rhythm. Her days were filled with the joyous chaos of teaching at Bright Futures, her evenings often spent in the company of the charming Ethan Blackwood. For the first time since the betrayal in Millbrook, Sophia felt like she was truly living, not just surviving. On a crisp October morning, Sophia stood before her class, her heart swelling with pride as she watched her students eagerly engage in a group project. Among them was Miguel, a shy boy who had recently immigrated from Mexico. When Sophia had first met him, he had been withdrawn and struggling to adapt. Now, he was confidently explaining his ideas to his classmates and steadily improving English. "Ms. Martinez?" Miguel's voice pulled Sophia from her reverie. "Can you help us with this part?" As Sophia knelt beside the group, guiding them through their task, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Looking up, she saw Victoria standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Sophia, could I see you in my office for a moment?" Victoria asked, her tone carefully neutral. A flicker of unease passed through Sophia as she followed Victoria down the hallway. Had she done something wrong? Was the new ESL program not meeting expectations? As they entered the office, Sophia was surprised to see James already there, along with a distinguished-looking older man she didn't recognize. "Sophia," James began, his voice gentle, "I'd like you to meet someone. This is Senator Robert Blackwood." The senator stepped forward, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Martinez. I've heard wonderful things about your work here." As Sophia shook his hand, her mind raced. Blackwood, could he be related to Ethan? "Senator Blackwood is one of our most generous donors," Victoria explained. "He's been instrumental in securing funding for Bright Futures." The senator smiled warmly. "It's a cause close to my heart. In fact, my son Ethan speaks very highly of the work being done here. I believe you two have met?" Sophia's cheeks flushed. "Yes, we have," she admitted, suddenly feeling like a schoolgirl caught passing notes in class. James cleared his throat. "The senator is here today because he has an exciting proposition for us, Sophia. One that could take Bright Futures to a national level." Over the next hour, Senator Blackwood outlined his vision, a nationwide expansion of Bright Futures, with Sophia's ESL program as the cornerstone. It was an incredible opportunity, one that could change countless lives across the country. As Sophia left the meeting, her head spinning with possibilities, she couldn't shake a nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. The timing seemed almost too perfect. Was it just coincidence that Ethan's father had taken such an interest in her work? Or was there something more going on beneath the surface? That evening, as Sophia and Ethan strolled through Central Park, the golden sunset casting long shadows across the path, she decided to confront her concerns head-on. "Ethan," she began hesitantly, "did you know your father was meeting with Bright Futures today?" Ethan's steps faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. I may have mentioned your work to him," he admitted. "Sophia, you have to understand. When I see how passionate you are about teaching, how much you care about those kids. I just wanted to help. My father has the resources to make your dreams a reality on a scale you never imagined." Sophia pulled away, conflicting emotions warring within her. "Ethan, I appreciate the thought, but this is my career, my passion. I need to succeed or fail on my own merits, not because of who I'm dating or their connections." Ethan's face fell. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I never meant to overstep. I care about you." A lot. I thought I was helping." As they stood there, the autumn wind rustling the leaves around them, Sophia was struck by a sudden realization. For all his kindness and charm, there was still so much about Ethan she didn't know. And after what happened with Jackson, could she really trust her heart again so easily? "I think I need some time to process all of this," Sophia said quietly. "Maybe we should take a step back." The hurt in Ethan's eyes was palpable, but he nodded. "I understand. Just know that my feelings for you are real, Sophia. Whatever you decide, I'll respect your choice." As Sophia watched Ethan walk away, disappearing into the gathering dusk, she felt a familiar ache in her chest. Had she just made a terrible mistake? Or had she narrowly avoided another heartbreak? Little did Sophia know that her decision that evening would set in motion a chain of events that would not only challenge her newfound confidence but also force her to confront the ghosts of her past in ways she never imagined. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, in the sleepy town of Millbrook, Texas, change was brewing. The Hughes family empire, once seemingly unshakable, was showing cracks in its foundation. Jackson Hughes sat in his father's study, a stack of financial reports spread out before him. The numbers didn't lie, their company was in trouble. Years of questionable business practices and arrogant decision-making were finally catching up to them. "This can't be right," Richard Hughes muttered, snatching a report from his son's hands. "We've always bounced back before. This is just a temporary setback." Jackson shook his head, a grim determination settling over him. "No, Dad. This time it's different. We need to make some serious changes if we want to save the company and our reputation." Richard's face reddened with anger. "Our reputation? We are the Hughes family. This town owes everything to us." "Does it?" Jackson challenged, rising to his feet. "Or have we just been telling ourselves that to justify our actions? Look around, Dad. The world is changing. We need to change with it, or we'll be left behind." As father and son faced off, the weight of years of unspoken resentments and buried truths hung heavy in the air. It was at that moment that Veronica Sinclair burst into the room, her usual poise replaced by barely contained panic. "Richard, Jackson," she gasped, clutching a tablet in her manicured hands. "You need to see this." On the screen was a news article from a prominent New York publication. The headline made Jackson's blood run cold. From small-town scandal to big-city success, the inspiring journey of Sophia Martinez. The article detailed Sophia's work with Bright Futures, praising her innovative teaching methods and her dedication to underprivileged children. But it was the final paragraph that truly drove the knife home. When asked about her motivation, Ms. Martinez credits her experiences in her hometown of Millbrook, Texas. "I learned that sometimes the greatest challenges can lead to the most beautiful transformations," she says. "I'm grateful for every experience that led me to where I am today, even the painful ones. They taught me the importance of kindness, perseverance, and believing in oneself." Jackson felt a mix of emotions wash over him: shame, regret, and oddly, a spark of pride for the woman Sophia had become. He turned to his father, his jaw set with determination. "Dad, we need to make this right. Not just for the company, but for ourselves. We owe Sophia an apology, at the very least." Richard scoffed. "An apology? Have you lost your mind? That girl is nothing but a..." "That girl is now a respected educator making a real difference in the world," Jackson interrupted. "While we've been clinging to our outdated ideas, she's been out there actually helping people. Maybe it's time we learned something from her." Veronica watched the exchange with growing unease. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Sophia was meant to fade into obscurity, not become some sort of inspirational figure. And Jackson, the change in him was unsettling. Where was the carefree, easily manipulated man she had wrapped around her finger? As Jackson stormed out of the study, Veronica made a split-second decision. She couldn't let everything she had worked for slip away. It was time to take matters into her own hands. "Richard," she said sweetly, placing a hand on his arm. "I think I might have a solution to our problems. But first, we need to take a little trip to New York City." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Back in New York, Sophia threw herself into her work with renewed vigor. If she was going to be the face of Bright Future's national expansion, she was determined to earn it on her own merit, not because of any connections. But as the days passed, she found her thoughts continually drifting to Ethan. Had she been too hasty in pushing him away? Was she letting her past traumas cloud her judgment of a genuinely good man? "Mija," Aunt Rosa said one evening as they sat on the fire escape, sharing a plate of homemade tamales. "I see the way you look when you think about him. Why are you fighting it?" Sophia sighed, resting her head on her aunt's shoulder. "I'm scared, Tia. What if I'm wrong about him? What if I'm just setting myself up for another heartbreak?" Aunt Rosa chuckled softly. "Oh, my dear. That's the risk we take when we open our hearts. But let me ask you this, would you trade the joy you've found here, the lives you've touched, just to avoid the possibility of pain?" As Sophia pondered her aunt's words, her phone buzzed with a text from Victoria, "Emergency at the center. Need you here ASAP." Sophia's heart raced as she rushed to Bright Futures. Had something happened to one of the children? As she burst through the doors, she was met with an unexpected sight. The main hall was filled with familiar faces, her students, their parents, her colleagues, all wearing broad smiles. A banner hung from the ceiling, "Congratulations, Ms. Martinez, Teacher of the Year." As applause erupted around her, Sophia felt tears spring to her eyes. James and Victoria stepped forward, presenting her with a plaque. "Your dedication, your innovation, and most of all, your heart, Sophia," James said warmly, "have made you not just a great teacher, but an inspiration to us all." As Sophia accepted the award, her gaze swept the room, taking in the proud faces of her students, the grateful smiles of their parents. This was why she had come to New York. This was the difference she had always wanted to make. But then, at the back of the room, a figure caught her eye. Ethan stood there, a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, in his hands. Their eyes met, and in that moment, all of Sophia's doubts and fears seemed to melt away. As the celebration continued around them, Sophia made her way to Ethan. "You came," she said softly. Ethan smiled, handing her the flowers. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Sophia, I'm so proud of you. And I want you to know, I understand why you needed space. I respect your independence, your drive. It's one of the things I admire most about you." Sophia felt her heart swell. "Ethan, But before she could finish her thought, a commotion at the entrance caught everyone's attention. Sophia turned and felt the world drop out from beneath her feet. There, striding into the room with all the arrogance she remembered, were Richard Hughes and Veronica Sinclair. And behind them, looking as though he'd rather be anywhere else in the world, was Jackson. As a hush fell over the room, Sophia felt as though she were standing on the edge of a precipice. Her past and her present were colliding in spectacular fashion, and she knew that whatever happened next would change the course of her life forever. With her heart pounding in her chest, Sophia straightened her spine and took a deep breath. She had run from Millbrook as a broken-hearted girl, but she would face this moment as the strong, confident woman she had become. "Mr. Hughes," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "This is certainly a surprise. What brings you to New York?" Richard Hughes stepped forward, his usual smug expression somewhat subdued. Ms. Martinez, he began, his voice carrying across the now silent room. We've come to make amends. A ripple of whispers swept through the crowd. Sophia felt Ethan's reassuring presence beside her, giving her strength. Amends? Sophia repeated, arching an eyebrow. That's quite a journey for a simple apology. Jackson stepped forward then, his eyes meeting Sophia's with a mixture of shame and admiration. It's more than that, Sophia. We've come because we need your help. As Jackson explained the Hughes family's fall from grace, the financial troubles threatening to destroy everything they had built, Sophia listened with a growing sense of disbelief. The mighty Hughes empire, brought low by its own hubris and outdated practices. And you think I can help you? Sophia asked, incredulity coloring her voice. After everything you did to me? It was Veronica who spoke up then, her usual haughty demeanor cracking slightly. Your program, your teaching methods, they're revolutionary, Sophia. We've seen what you've accomplished here. If we could implement something similar back in Millbrook, it could save not just our company, but the whole town. Sophia's mind reeled. This was a twist she could never have anticipated. The very people who had humiliated her, who had tried to break her spirit, were now asking for her help. As she stood there, caught between her past and her future, Sophia felt all eyes on her. Her students, curious and confused. Her colleagues, protective and wary. Ethan, supportive but clearly struggling to understand the full scope of the situation. And then there was Jackson, the man who had once held her heart, now looking at her with a mixture of regret and hope. In that moment, Sophia realized that this wasn't just about her anymore. Her decision would affect not only her own life but the lives of countless others in New York and in Millbrook. Taking a deep breath, Sophia made her choice. I'll consider your proposal, she said carefully. But on one condition. Whatever plan we develop, it has to prioritize the needs of the community, especially the underprivileged. No more exploiting people for profit. Richard Hughes looked like he had swallowed something sour, but he nodded. We're open to negotiations. As the tension in the room slowly dissipated, Sophia turned to find Ethan watching her with a mix of awe and concern. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. After what they did to you. Sophia smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. I'm sure that this is an opportunity to make a real difference. And maybe it's a chance for healing, too. As the impromptu meeting broke up and people began to disperse, Sophia found herself face to face with Jackson for the first time in over a year. You're incredible, you know that, he said softly. After everything we put you through, you're still willing to help. Sophia met his gaze steadily. I'm not doing it for you, Jackson. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. For the people of Millbrook and for myself. As Jackson nodded and turned away, Sophia felt a chapter of her life finally closing. The girl who had loved him, who had been broken by his betrayal, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had found her strength, her purpose, and just maybe, a new chance at love. Ethan's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Whatever you decide, he said, I'm here for you. Every step of the way. As Sophia looked around the room at her students, her colleagues, at Ethan, and even at the unexpected visitors from her past, she felt a surge of gratitude. Her journey had been filled with twists and turns, with heartbreak and triumph. But it had led her here, to this moment, where she stood poised to make a difference on a scale she had never imagined. Little did Sophia know that the biggest challenges and the most shocking revelations were yet to come. As she prepared to bridge her past and her future, forces were already in motion that would test her in ways she could never have anticipated. The stage was set for a showdown that would not only determine the fate of Millbrook but also force Sophia to confront the deepest truths about herself and those around her. As the night wore on and the unexpected guests from Millbrook settled into their hotel rooms, Sophia found herself unable to sleep. She stood by the window of her small apartment, looking out at the glittering New York skyline, her mind a whirlwind of emotions and memories. A soft knock at the door startled her from her reverie. Opening it, she found Ethan standing there, concern etched on his handsome face. "I couldn't sleep," he said softly. "I kept thinking about everything that happened today. Are you okay?" Sophia stepped aside, letting him in. As they sat on her worn couch, she found herself pouring out the whole story, the cruel deception in Millbrook, the heartbreak, the struggle to rebuild her life in New York. Ethan listened intently, his hand holding hers, offering silent support. When she finished, Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Sophia," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "I had no idea you'd been through so much. Your strength, your resilience, it's incredible." Sophia felt a warmth bloom in her chest at his words. But there was still a nagging doubt. "Ethan, there's something I need to know. Your father's interest in Bright Futures, your involvement, was any of it because of what happened in Millbrook? Did you know about my past?" Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" "No, Sophia. I swear, I had no idea about any of this until tonight. My interest in you, in your work, it's all been genuine. I fell for you because of who you are, not because of any past drama." Relief washed over Sophia. She leaned in, resting her head on Ethan's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For being here, for understanding." As the first light of dawn began to streak across the sky, Sophia and Ethan talked, planning their next steps. They agreed that while the opportunity to help Millbrook was important, they needed to be cautious. The Hughes family had proven untrustworthy before, and Sophia was determined not to let her guard down completely. Over the next few weeks, Sophia threw herself into developing a comprehensive plan for educational reform in Millbrook. She worked closely with James and Victoria, ensuring that the expansion of Bright Futures would maintain its integrity and mission. Ethan, true to his word, supported her every step of the way, offering his business expertise to help make the plan financially viable. But as Sophia's professional life soared to new heights, strange occurrences began to cast a shadow over her personal life. Anonymous notes with vague warnings appeared at her apartment. She felt eyes watching her as she walked home from work. And most disturbing of all, some of her students' parents began to receive calls questioning Sophia's qualifications and background. "It has to be Veronica," Sophia confided in Ethan one evening as they pored over the latest draft of the Millbrook proposal. "She's never been able to accept not getting her way." Ethan's jaw clenched. "We need to put a stop to this. Maybe it's time to go public with what happened in Millbrook. Show everyone the kind of people the Hughes really are." But Sophia hesitated. "If we do that, it could jeopardize the whole project. And as much as I despise what they did to me, this isn't just about revenge. It's about helping the people of Millbrook who really need it." As they debated their next move, neither of them noticed the shadowy figure watching from across the street, a camera with a long-range lens capturing their every move. The next morning, as Sophia arrived at Bright Futures, she was met with chaos. Reporters swarmed the entrance, shouting questions about her past, about her relationship with the Hughes family, about alleged improprieties with the Bright Futures funding. James and Victoria ushered her inside, their faces grim. "Someone leaked details about your history with the Hughes to the press," James explained. "They're painting you as a gold digger who's now using her connection to the family to further her career." Sophia felt as though the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. Everything she had worked so hard for was threatening to unravel. But as she looked around at the faces of her colleagues, her students, she felt a steely resolve settle over her. No more running, she said firmly. No more letting them control the narrative. It's time to tell my story, the whole truth. As Sophia stepped out to face the media, Ethan by her side, she felt a strange sense of calm. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative, to show the world who she truly was. But even as she began to speak, revealing the painful truth of what had happened in Millbrook, little did Sophia know that the biggest shock was yet to come. For in that very moment, a figure from her past was making their way to New York, carrying with them a secret that would change everything Sophia thought she knew about herself and her history. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would not only determine Sophia's future but also uncover long-buried truths that would shake the foundations of both Millbrook and Bright Futures to their very core. As the sun set on this tumultuous day, Sophia stood on the precipice of a revelation that would redefine everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. The New York sky was overcast, mirroring the tumultuous atmosphere surrounding Sophia Martinez as she stood before a sea of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. With Ethan Blackwood by her side, she took a deep breath and began to tell her story. My name is Sophia Martinez, and I'm here to set the record straight, she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. A year ago, I was a kindergarten teacher in Millbrook, Texas, engaged to be married to Jackson Hughes. I believed I was living a fairy tale. But that fairy tale turned out to be a cruel joke. As Sophia recounted the painful details of her humiliation at the hands of the Hughes family, the crowd fell silent. She spoke of the betrayal, the public shame, and her flight to New York. But more importantly, she spoke of her journey of healing, of finding her true calling at Bright Futures, and of her determination to use her experiences to help others. I stand before you today not as a victim, but as a survivor, Sophia concluded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. My work at Bright Futures is not about revenge or personal gain. It's about ensuring that every child, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to reach their full potential. And if expanding our program to Millbrook can help achieve that goal, then I'm willing to work with the Hughes family, not for them, but for the community they've long neglected. As she finished speaking, a hush fell over the crowd. Then, slowly, applause began to build. Sophia felt Ethan squeeze her hand, a proud smile on his face. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. As the applause died down, a commotion at the back of the crowd caught everyone's attention. A woman was pushing her way through, her face hidden by large sunglasses and a scarf. Sophia, the woman called out, her voice achingly familiar. Sophia, please! As the woman reached the front, she removed her disguise, and Sophia felt the world tilt on its axis. Standing before her, looking older and more careworn than Sophia remembered, was her mother, Elena Martinez. Mama? Sophia whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. What are you doing here? Elena's eyes were filled with a mixture of love and regret. Mihija, I've come to tell you the truth. The whole truth. Before Sophia could respond, she felt a hand on her arm. It was James, looking concerned. Sophia, we need to move this inside. Now. As they ushered Elena into the Bright Futures building, away from the prying eyes of the media, Sophia's mind raced. She hadn't seen her mother in years, not since Elena had abandoned the family when Sophia was just a teenager. What could possibly have brought her here now? Once they were safely inside James's office, Elena turned to face her daughter. Sophia, my darling, I know I have no right to be here after everything I've done. But when I saw the news, when I realized what the Hughes family had done to you, I couldn't stay away any longer. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you years ago. Sophia felt Ethan's steadying presence beside her as she braced herself for whatever revelation was coming. What is it, Mama? What could possibly be so important that you'd show up after all this time? Elena took a deep breath, tears streaming down her face. It's about your father, Sophia. Your real father. The room fell silent as the weight of Elena's words sank in. Sophia felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. What do you mean, my real father? Papa. The man who raised you, who loved you as his own, he wasn't your biological father, Elena interrupted gently. Your real father is Richard Hughes. The revelation hit Sophia like a physical blow. She staggered backward, grateful for Ethan's supportive arm around her waist. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. You're lying. But even as the words left her mouth, pieces began to fall into place. The strange tension whenever the Hughes family had been around her growing up. The way Richard had always seemed to watch her with a mixture of disdain and something else. The cruelty of their deception suddenly took on a whole new dimension. I was young, Elena continued, her voice thick with regret. I worked as a maid in the Hughes household. Richard, he took advantage of me. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I confided in Maria, the cook. She introduced me to her brother, the man you knew as your father. He agreed to marry me, to give you his name. Sophia's mind reeled as she tried to process this information. But why? Why didn't you ever tell me? Elena's eyes filled with fresh tears. At first, it was to protect you. As you grew older, I saw how kind you were, how different from the Hughes family. I was afraid the truth would destroy that goodness in you. And then I couldn't bear the guilt anymore. That's why I left. The room fell into a heavy silence as Sophia grappled with the weight of this revelation. She thought of Jackson, the man she had once loved, who was now her half-brother. She thought of Richard Hughes, the man who had orchestrated her humiliation, who was her biological father. Ethan was the first to break the silence. Sophia, he said gently, I know this is a lot to take in. But remember, you are still you. This doesn't change who you are or what you've accomplished. Sophia nodded numbly, grateful for his unwavering support. But as she looked at her mother, a new question formed in her mind. Does Richard know? Is that why they came to New York? Elena shook her head. No, mi hija. As far as I know, Richard never suspected. The timing, it could have been his, or your papa's. I never told anyone but Maria, and she took the secret to her grave. As the implications of this secret began to sink in, a knock at the door startled everyone. James opened it to find Victoria looking grave. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but you need to see this. She handed James a tablet, and as he read, his face paled. It's from the board of directors, he said, looking up at Sophia. In light of the recent revelations, they're calling for your immediate resignation from Bright Futures. Sophia felt as though she had been punched in the gut. Everything she had worked for, everything she had built, was crumbling around her. And for what? A truth she had never asked for, never wanted? As she looked around the room, at James and Victoria's concerned faces, at her long-lost mother's tearful eyes, at Ethan's steadfast support, Sophia felt a surge of determination. She had overcome betrayal and heartbreak before. She had rebuilt her life from nothing. She would not let this new challenge defeat her. No, she said firmly, straightening her spine. I will not resign. I've done nothing wrong, and I won't let anyone, not the Hughes family, not the board, not even my own past, take away what I've worked so hard to build. Ethan squeezed her hand, a proud smile on his face. I'm with you, Sophia. Whatever you decide to do next, I'm by your side. As Sophia began to formulate a plan to fight back against the board's decision, little did she know that across town, another meeting was taking place, one that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. In a luxurious suite at the Four Seasons, Richard Hughes paced back and forth, his face a mask of fury. How could this happen? He raged at Jackson and Veronica. We came here to salvage our reputation, not destroy it completely. Jackson, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since Sophia's press conference, finally spoke up. Maybe this is for the best, Dad. Maybe it's time we face the consequences of our actions. Richard rounded on his son, eyes blazing. Consequences? You have no idea what real consequences are, boy. If this gets any worse, we could lose everything. The company, our standing in Millbrook, everything. Veronica, ever the schemer, saw an opportunity. Not necessarily, she said smoothly. Think about it, Richard. Sophia's story has captured the public's imagination. If we play this right, we could turn it to our advantage. Both Hughes men turned to look at her, intrigued despite themselves. What do you mean? Richard asked cautiously. A slow, calculating smile spread across Veronica's face. It's simple. We embrace the story. We admit to our mistakes, show remorse, and position ourselves as changed people who want to make amends. With Sophia's program as the centerpiece, we could rebrand the entire Hughes empire as a force for social good. As Richard and Jackson considered this idea, none of them noticed the hotel room door quietly closing. In the hallway, a figure hurried towards the elevator, clutching a phone with a recording of the entire conversation. Back at Bright Futures, Sophia was in the midst of drafting a statement to the board when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I have information that could change everything. Meet me at Washington Square Park in 1 hour. Come alone. Sophia stared at the message, her heart racing. Could this be another trap? Or was it the key to saving everything she had worked for? As she debated what to do, Ethan noticed her distress. What is it? He asked, concern evident in his voice. Sophia hesitated for a moment before showing him the text. I have to go, she said firmly. This might be our only chance to get ahead of whatever the Hughes family is planning. Ethan frowned. It's not safe, Sophia. At least let me come with you. But Sophia shook her head. No, I need to do this alone. But I promise I'll be careful. If I'm not back in 2 hours, call the police. As Sophia made her way to Washington Square Park, the sky opened up, rain pouring down in sheets. By the time she reached the agreed-upon meeting spot, she was soaked to the skin, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Sophia gasped as she recognized him. It was Thomas, the Hughes family's longtime chauffeur and butler. Miss Sophia, he said, his voice low and urgent. I'm sorry for all the cloak and dagger, but I couldn't risk being seen. I have something you need to hear. As Thomas played the recording of the conversation he had overheard in the Hughes hotel room, Sophia felt a mix of emotions wash over her. Anger at their continued manipulation, disgust at their willingness to exploit her story for their own gain, but also a glimmer of hope. This could be the evidence she needed to prove her innocence and save Bright Futures. Thank you, Thomas, Sophia said earnestly as the recording ended. But why are you doing this? Why help me? Thomas's eyes softened with a paternal affection that took Sophia by surprise. Because, Miss Sophia, I've watched you grow up. I've seen your kindness, your determination. And I've seen what the Hughes family's cruelty has done to you. It's time someone stood up to them, and I believe you're the one to do it. As Sophia hurried back to Bright Futures, the recording clutched tightly in her hand, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had been knocked down time and time again, but each time she had risen stronger. This time would be no different. Bursting into James's office, where Ethan, Victoria, and her mother were still gathered, Sophia's eyes shone with determination. "I know how we're going to fight this," she announced. "We're going to beat the Hughes family at their own game." As she began to outline her plan, Sophia felt a surge of confidence. The path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time since this whole ordeal began, she felt truly in control of her own destiny. Little did she know that across town, another player was about to enter the game, one whose arrival would shake the very foundations of everything Sophia thought she knew about loyalty, love, and the true meaning of family. As the rain continued to pour outside, washing away the old and making way for the new, Sophia Martinez stood on the brink of a battle that would not only determine her future but also force her to confront the deepest truths about herself and those around her. The stage was set for a showdown that would change the lives of everyone involved, forever. The tension in the Bright Futures conference room was palpable as Sophia Martinez laid out her plan. James, Victoria, Ethan, and Elena listened intently, their faces a mix of concern and admiration. "We're going to use their own tactics against them," Sophia explained, her eyes blazing with determination. "They want to exploit my story? Fine. We'll give them a story they'll never forget." Over the next few hours, they crafted a strategy that was equal parts bold and risky. They would call a press conference, ostensibly to address the board's concerns and the Hughes family's involvement. But instead of playing defense, they would go on the offensive. "We'll reveal everything," Sophia said. The original betrayal, their attempt to manipulate Bright Futures, and now this latest scheme. "But we'll do it our way, on our terms." As dawn broke over New York City, Sophia stood before a mirror, steeling herself for the battle ahead. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Gone was the naive girl from Millbrook, replaced by a fighter ready to take on the world. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said softly, coming up behind her. "We could find another way." Sophia turned to face him, her resolve unwavering. "No, this is the only way. It's time to end this, once and for all." As they made their way to the press conference, neither of them noticed the sleek black car trailing them from a distance. The auditorium was packed, cameras flashing as Sophia took the stage. In the front row, she could see the Hughes family, Richard looking smug, Jackson uncomfortable, and Veronica practically preening. They thought they had won. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sophia began, her voice steady. "I stand before you today not just as the director of Bright Futures, but as a woman who has faced betrayal, humiliation, and attempted manipulation. But I also stand before you as someone who refuses to be a victim." As Sophia recounted the entire sordid tale, from the cruel prank in Millbrook to the recent attempts to exploit her story, she could see the shock and disgust growing on the faces of the reporters. But it was when she played Thomas's recording that the real fireworks began. Richard Hughes leapt to his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is slander," he bellowed. "I'll sue you for every penny you have." But Sophia stood her ground. "Go ahead, Mr. Hughes. I have nothing to hide. Can you say the same?" As security moved to restrain Richard, Sophia noticed Jackson slipping out of the auditorium. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw something she never expected: respect, and perhaps a glimmer of remorse. But the biggest shock was yet to come. As Sophia prepared to wrap up her statement, the doors at the back of the auditorium burst open. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s strode down the aisle, flanked by a team of lawyers. "My name is George Blackwood," the man announced, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "I'm Ethan's uncle and the majority shareholder of Blackwood Industries. And I'm here to set the record straight." Sophia felt Ethan stiffen beside her. This was not part of the plan. George Blackwood took the stage, his presence commanding everyone's attention. "For years, I've watched my brother Robert and his son Ethan run our family company into the ground with their ill-conceived charity projects. When I heard about this Bright Futures expansion, I knew I had to intervene." He turned to face Sophia, his expression a mixture of admiration and regret. "Ms. Martinez, I owe you an apology. In my misguided attempt to protect our family interests, I authorized an investigation into your background. I was the one who leaked your history with the Hughes family to the press." The auditorium erupted in chaos. Sophia felt as though the ground was shifting beneath her feet once again. She turned to Ethan, searching his face for any sign that he had known about this. "Sophia, I swear, I had no idea," Ethan said, his voice pleading. "I would never." But Sophia's response was cut off by another commotion at the back of the room. Elena Martinez was being led in by two police officers, her face streaked with tears. "I'm so sorry, mihija," Elena sobbed as she was brought to the stage. "They found out about everything." One of the officers stepped forward, his face grim. "Ms. Martinez, we have a warrant for your mother's arrest. She's wanted for embezzlement and fraud dating back to her time working for the Hughes family." Sophia's world spun. It was too much, too fast. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling around her. She felt herself swaying, her vision blurring at the edges. And then, just when she thought things couldn't get any more surreal, a voice cut through the chaos, a voice she never expected to hear again. "Stop! Everyone, please, just stop." The crowd parted, and there, looking older and more careworn than Sophia remembered, stood her father. Not Richard Hughes, but the man who had raised her, who she had believed dead for the past 5 years. "Papa?" Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible in the sudden hush that had fallen over the room. As Roberto Martinez made his way to the stage, the years seemed to melt away. Sophia saw flashes of her childhood, her father's strong hands guiding her as she learned to ride a bike, his proud smile at her kindergarten graduation, his unwavering support even when the whole town turned against her. "My Sophia," Roberto said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. For everything." And suddenly, Sophia was moving, pushing past the shocked onlookers, past Ethan and the Blackwoods, past the Hughes family and the police. She threw herself into her father's arms, sobbing like the little girl she had once been. As father and daughter clung to each other, the rest of the world faded away. There would be time later for explanations, for unraveling the web of lies and secrets that had brought them to this point. But for now, in this moment, nothing else mattered. It was Ethan who finally broke the spell, his voice gentle but urgent. "Sophia, I hate to interrupt, but we need to get out of here. The press is going crazy, and I think the police want to ask some questions." Sophia pulled back from her father's embrace, suddenly remembering where they were and what was at stake. She looked around the auditorium, taking in the sea of shocked faces, the flashing cameras, the police officers conferring in hushed tones. "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath. "Let's go." As they made their way out of the auditorium, Sophia felt as though she were moving through a dream. Her father's hand was warm and solid in hers, a tangible reminder that this was real, that he was truly here. They ended up at a small diner a few blocks away, an incongruous group huddled around a sticky formica table: Sophia, her parents, Ethan, James, and Victoria. The waitress eyed them curiously as she poured coffee, no doubt wondering about the tear-stained faces and rumpled formal wear. "I think," James said slowly, "that we all have a lot of explaining to do." And so, over plates of greasy eggs and toast, the truth finally came out. Roberto explained how he had faked his own death to protect Sophia and Elena from the consequences of Elena's embezzlement. Elena, through tears, confessed to the full extent of her crimes, not just stealing from the Hughes family, but using that money to fund Roberto's struggling business. "I thought I was helping," she said, her voice small and broken. "I never meant for it to go this far." Ethan, for his part, swore once again that he had known nothing of his uncle's schemes. "I meant everything I said, Sophia," he insisted, his eyes pleading. "My feelings for you are real." As the stories unfolded, overlapping and intertwining, Sophia felt as though she were watching a complex tapestry being woven before her eyes. Every thread of her life, every relationship and experience, was being re-examined in light of these new revelations. "What happens now?" Victoria asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Sophia looked around the table, at the faces of those who had become her family in New York, and those who had been her family all along. She thought of the Hughes family, of the Blackwoods, of Bright Futures, and all the children whose lives had been touched by the program. "Now," she said slowly, "we pick up the pieces. We tell the truth, all of it. And we find a way to move forward that honors the good we've done while making amends for the mistakes of the past." As they left the diner, stepping out into the bright New York morning, Sophia felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be legal battles to face, relationships to rebuild, and a lifetime of lies to untangle. But for the first time in what felt like forever, she was facing the future with her eyes wide open, surrounded by people who truly loved her. Little did Sophia know that the biggest challenge, and the most unexpected ally, was yet to come. As she prepared to face the world and tell her story on her own terms, fate had one last twist in store, one that would test her newfound strength and resolve in ways she could never have imagined. Across town, in a luxurious penthouse overlooking Central Park, Jackson Hughes sat alone, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. On the TV, muted news reports showed footage from the press conference, Sophia's face flashing across the screen again and again. As he watched, Jackson felt something shift inside him. The anger and resentment that had driven him for so long seemed to drain away, replaced by a growing sense of clarity. He thought of Sophia, her kindness, her resilience, the way she had always seen the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. With a sudden, decisive movement, Jackson reached for his phone. His fingers hovered over the keypad for a moment before he began to type. "Sophia, I know I have no right to ask this, but I need to talk to you. There's something you need to know, something that could change everything. Please, give me one last chance to make things right." As he hit send, Jackson felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He didn't know if Sophia would respond, if she would ever be able to forgive him. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing the right thing. Little did either of them know that this message would set in motion a chain of events that would not only redefine their relationship but also have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved in this tangled web of love, betrayal, and redemption. As the sun rose higher over New York City, casting long shadows across the bustling streets, the stage was set for the final act of this extraordinary drama. Sophia Martinez, the girl who had once fled Millbrook in tears, now stood at the center of a storm that threatened to upend the lives of some of the most powerful people in the country. But this time, she was not running. This time, she was ready to face whatever came next, head-on and with open eyes. For Sophia had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that true strength comes not from avoiding pain or hiding from the truth, but from embracing it, learning from it, and using it to build a better future. As she walked down the busy New York street, arm in arm with her long-lost father and the man who might just be the love of her life, Sophia felt a surge of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets were yet to be revealed, she knew that she had the strength to face them. The betrayed bride had become a warrior, and her story was far from over. The New York City skyline glittered in the fading light of dusk as Sophia Martinez stood at the window of her small apartment, her mind racing with the events of the past few days. Her phone buzzed insistently on the coffee table, another message from Jackson Hughes. She had been avoiding his calls and texts since the press conference, unsure of how to proceed. "You should talk to him," Roberto Martinez said gently, coming to stand beside his daughter. "Whatever he has to say, you're strong enough to hear it now." Sophia turned to look at her father, still marveling at his presence. "How can you be so forgiving, Papa? After everything the Hughes family put us through?" Roberto's eyes crinkled with a wisdom born of hardship. Mija, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is to listen, to try to understand. With a deep breath, Sophia picked up her phone and dialed Jackson's number. "Meet me at Washington Square Park in an hour," she said when he answered, her voice steady. As Sophia made her way to the park, the cool evening air carried the promise of change. She found Jackson sitting on a bench, looking more disheveled and vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "Sophia," he said, standing as she approached. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But I think it's time we had an honest conversation, don't you?" Over the next hour, as the park bustled with life around them, Jackson poured out his heart. He spoke of the pressure he had always felt to live up to his father's expectations, of the guilt that had been eating away at him since the night of their engagement party. "I was a coward," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I knew what we were doing was wrong, but I was too afraid to stand up to my father, to Veronica. I've regretted it every day since." Sophia listened silently, her heart a turbulent mix of emotions. "Why are you telling me this now, Jackson?" she asked finally. Jackson took a deep breath. "Because I can't live with the lies anymore. And because I've found something that I think belongs to you." From his pocket, he produced a worn leather journal. "This was my grandmother's," he explained. "I found it when we were going through her things after she passed. Sophia, I think you need to read this." With trembling hands, Sophia opened the journal. As she read, her eyes widened in shock. The pages contained a detailed account of an affair between Richard Hughes and a young maid, Elena Martinez. "My grandmother knew," Jackson said softly. "She knew about you, about your mother. She wanted to make things right, but my grandfather threatened to ruin her if she ever spoke a word." Sophia felt as though the ground was shifting beneath her feet once again. "So it's true," she whispered. "Richard Hughes really is my biological father." Jackson nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Yes. And I'm going to make sure he takes responsibility for his actions. All of them." As they sat there, the weight of their shared history hanging between them, Sophia felt a sudden clarity. "Thank you for this, Jackson," she said. "But you understand that this doesn't change anything between us, right?" Jackson's smile was bittersweet. "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sophia. I needed you to know the truth. And I want to help make things right, if I can." As Sophia left the park, the journal clutched tightly to her chest. She felt as though a chapter of her life was finally closing. But little did she know that the biggest challenge, and the most unexpected alliance, was yet to come. The next morning, as Sophia prepared to face yet another day of media scrutiny and legal negotiations, her phone rang. It was Ethan. "Sophia, you need to turn on the news. Now." As she flipped on the TV, Sophia gasped. There, addressing a room full of reporters, was Richard Hughes. But this was not the arrogant, unapologetic man she had come to know. This Richard Hughes looked tired, defeated, and remorseful. "I stand before you today to confess to a lifetime of mistakes," Richard was saying, his voice trembling slightly. "I have hurt many people in my pursuit of power and wealth, but none more so than Sophia Martinez and her family." As Richard went on to detail his affair with Elena, his knowledge of Sophia's true parentage, and his subsequent attempts to destroy her, Sophia felt a strange mix of emotions wash over her. Anger, certainly, but also a sense of vindication and, surprisingly, pity. "I cannot undo the harm I have caused," Richard concluded, "but I can try to make amends. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO of Hughes Enterprises. In my place, I am appointing a new leader, someone with the vision and compassion to guide our company in a more ethical direction. Someone who has shown incredible strength and resilience in the face of adversity. I am appointing Sophia Martinez as the new CEO of Hughes Enterprises. The room erupted in chaos as reporters shouted questions. Sophia stood frozen, unable to process what she had just heard. Her phone buzzed incessantly, calls from James, Victoria, Ethan, her parents. But all she could focus on was the image of Richard Hughes on the screen, looking directly into the camera as if he could see her through it. "Sophia," he said, his voice softer now. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. But I am asking for a chance to make things right. Not just for you, but for all the people our company has wronged over the years. Will you help me do that?" The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of meetings, legal consultations, and intense media scrutiny. Sophia found herself at the center of a storm, navigating the complex waters of corporate takeover while also trying to process her own tangled emotions. Through it all, her support system remained strong. Ethan stood by her side, offering unwavering support and love. Her parents, finally free from the weight of their secrets, worked to rebuild their relationship with each other and with their daughter. James and Victoria threw themselves into ensuring that Bright Futures would not only survive the scandal but thrive in its wake. Even Jackson proved to be an unexpected ally, using his insider knowledge to help Sophia navigate the treacherous world of high-stakes business. As the dust began to settle, Sophia found herself standing once again before a room full of reporters. But this time, she was not on the defensive. This time, she was in control. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice strong and clear. "I stand before you today not as a victim, not as a pawn in someone else's game, but as a woman who has faced adversity and emerged stronger for it. I have accepted the position of CEO of Hughes Enterprises, but on my own terms." She went on to outline her vision for the company, a vision that combines sound business practices with genuine social responsibility. The Bright Futures program would be expanded, not just to Millbrook, but to communities across the country. A significant portion of the company's profits would be dedicated to educational initiatives and community development. "We have an opportunity here," Sophia concluded, "to show that success in business does not have to come at the expense of ethics and compassion. I invite all of you to join us on this journey of transformation and redemption." As applause filled the room, Sophia felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had taken the pain and betrayal that had once threatened to destroy her and transformed it into a force for good. In the months that followed, Sophia threw herself into her new role with characteristic determination and compassion. Under her leadership, Hughes Enterprises underwent a radical transformation. The company's corrupt practices were rooted out, ethical standards were raised, and a new culture of transparency and accountability took hold. But even as she navigated the challenges of her professional life, Sophia never lost sight of what truly mattered. She made time for regular family dinners with her parents, working through years of hurt and misunderstanding. She continued to teach classes at Bright Futures, refusing to lose touch with the children who had given her so much hope and purpose. And then there was Ethan. Their relationship had been tested by the storm of revelations and changes, but it had emerged stronger for it. On a warm summer evening, as they walked hand in hand through Central Park, Ethan dropped to one knee. "Sophia Martinez," he said, his eyes shining with love and admiration. "You are the strongest, most compassionate person I have ever known. You've faced challenges that would have broken most people, and you've emerged not just unbroken, but more beautiful and inspiring than ever. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy streaming down her face, Sophia pulled Ethan to his feet and into a passionate embrace. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. Their wedding, held in the garden of the newly established Bright Futures Community Center in Millbrook, was a celebration of love, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Sophia's parents walked her down the aisle together, their faces beaming with pride. James and Victoria stood as witnesses, their own relationship having blossomed amidst the chaos of the past year. Even the Hughes family was present. Richard, looking older and more subdued, watched from the back, a bittersweet smile on his face. Jackson stood proudly as one of Ethan's groomsmen, a testament to the healing power of honesty and redemption. As Sophia and Ethan exchanged their vows, surrounded by the people they loved and the community they had helped to rebuild, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. This was more than just a wedding, it was a symbol of hope, a promise that even the deepest wounds could heal, that love could triumph over betrayal, that one person's courage could spark a chain reaction of positive change. In the years that followed, Sophia and Ethan's love only grew stronger. They became parents to twins, a boy and a girl whom they named Hope and Roberto, in honor of the resilience and love that had brought them to this point. Hughes Enterprises, under Sophia's leadership, became a model of corporate responsibility, inspiring other companies to follow suit. The Bright Futures program expanded across the country, touching the lives of thousands of children and families. And Millbrook, the town that had once been the site of Sophia's greatest humiliation, was transformed. The old divisions between the wealthy and the working class began to dissolve as new opportunities opened up. The Hughes mansion, once a symbol of exclusion and privilege, was converted into a community center, its gates always open to all. On the 5th anniversary of her wedding, Sophia stood on the balcony of her New York apartment, looking out over the city she had come to love. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts, love," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Sophia smiled, leaning back into his embrace. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," she said softly. "There were moments when I thought I'd never be happy again, when the pain and betrayal seemed too much to bear. But now?" Ethan prompted gently. "Now I'm grateful for every step of the journey," Sophia said, turning in his arms to face him. "Even the painful parts. Because they led me here, to you, to our family, to this life we've built together." As they stood there, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude wash over her. She had taken the broken pieces of her life and created something beautiful, something that touched the lives of countless others. The betrayed bride had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of resilience, forgiveness, and love. And as she looked to the future, Sophia Martinez Blackwood knew that the best was yet to come.